The Rivian R1T gets a refresh for the 2025 model year. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior changes, the interior changes, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of efficiency you can expect, especially here in wintertime with the new heat pump that these have, as well as the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And so as far as this Gen 2 of the Rivian, that's what they're calling these, is Gen 2 for both this R1T and the R1S, which get all the same improvements, both exterior and interior, as well as under the skin here. And as far as the exterior changes, it's very subtle. Really the main giveaway, I think, is the fact that you now have turn signals there in the front bumper, right underneath those DRLs where you used to have the fog lamps. That's really, I think, the main giveaway. The headlights are new, and they now have an adaptive beam that can intelligently dim themselves for oncoming traffic to not blind other drivers. And then you also have in that DRL bar there now a little charging status indicator, and it'll, give you kind of a readout of how far the vehicle is charged just by looking at it. And you also see one of those status bars on the back bar, which also looks the same as before, but very subtly has those new little internals in it as well. Anyway, getting back to these headlights, they also have some revised internals to them as well. But otherwise, still looks really nice up front here. I still love this dark green paint too, really is sharp. And this one also looks pretty cool with these range wheels, which are 22, still nice and big, but have the covers over them to give it a very aerodynamic look. And then coming down to the sides here, you also do have new door handles. That's the only other minor little tweak here on the side. You also have new cameras, which you'll mostly just appreciate from behind the wheel. And then going out to the back there, again, aside from that little status bar, basically the same looks out back, maybe very subtle tiny tweaks if you're a Rivian fan, but other than that, no one else is going to really notice. So it is a subtle refresh. No one's going to run out and buy the new one just because it looks a little fresher, I don't think, but nice little tweaks nonetheless. And the main differences here are under the skin in particular, where this thing has a drastically re-envisioned electrical system that's much simpler, has a lot lighter weight, and has some other really nice improvements in addition to all the mechanical improvements. Like this one we're standing next to here is the Tri Motor, which is a new option here that you have now, and we'll get into all that once we hit the road. But overall, a really nice little exterior refresh nip tuck for a vehicle that I have to say also still looked really good anyway. Didn't need any kind of refresh, and honestly I'm happy they didn't mess with success. The interior of the Rivian R1T is mostly the same. If you're familiar with Rivians, it's still pretty much buttonless, and this is actually my first time reviewing a Rivian, so I'm going to give you my impressions on this interior and what I think of it after living with it for about a week now. But as far as people familiar with the Rivians here, some of the big changes here are that now this roof, this glass roof, is a dynamic glass roof. So it has an option, you press a little button on the screen here and it goes opaque, so it can block out more of that sun. It is pretty heavily tinted as well, but I've heard some complaints from owners that it still can get kind of hot. So great that you now have the ability to block out some of that sunlight there. You also have a Rivian premium audio system in these now, and it's really fantastic. We have speakers in the roof here, and it's a really impressive stereo. I'll talk more about that whenever we get into this infotainment system. But as far as the Rivian basics here, first thing, sitting down in these seats, you have these very nice quilted seats. The quilting pattern is new here for these Gen 2 models as well. And they're really pretty soft, comfortable seats. I don't think they're the most comfortable seats ever, but I think for this segment of vehicle, they are some of the best for sure. And they are also heated and ventilated, as well as having, of course, the usual lumbar adjustments. But really good seats. I have no complaints with them, and it is really nice, especially here with this more cream-colored leather you have combined with this blonde wood here, which has a really nice open pore surface to it. All the materials in here do feel very high quality. Everything is wrapped in leather and firmer leather or this wood. It's not super plush. A lot of the surfaces are a little bit harder than I would like, but it's just all feels very expensive, very premium, more so than I'd say even some of the other competitors that make an attempt at being premium in this segment. This one really does feel very high quality. Moving on to the steering wheel here though. The steering wheel is a really nice wheel as far as 9-3 grip, 10 and 2 notches are all nice and comfortable. You have again more of that nice open pore wood, but it's so simple with the steering wheel, which is great from a visual standpoint. And I guess it means that you can't be confused by the steering wheel because there's really not a whole lot to it here. But you just have these two little scrollers, and on the left hand side here, that'll control your volume and skipping tracks with this little rocker switch. The right hand side here will basically control your adaptive cruise settings, and that's pretty much it. But there's no label for these. Everything in this vehicle, I had to Google how do I do this or that. I did have like a whole page of like tips on how to do some of this stuff that they gave me. But some of these things still, I was just like, what does this do? And I'm having to like try everything out. Obviously, there's just a learning curve. Rivian just does things a little differently than some others do. Once you learn those things, then, you know, I'm sure it's not a big deal, but getting in one of these, it's really felt so foreign to me, even though I've reviewed over 700 cars. You know, getting in this thing, it was still like, okay, now how do I do this? How do I do that? I mean, like, there's not even a way to change the steering column or even your mirrors with any physical buttons. You got to go into the screen and use these little toggles to do that. There's also no way to even change the air vents. They kind of copied off of Tesla with that, and you have to, you know, drag around your finger on the screen in order to change where the air vents are directing the air. You know, some of those types of things, I guess, you know, they save, you know, a few bucks here and there, you know, getting rid of all these knobs and buttons, but, you know, it's just a little, again, a little bit more of a learning curve. I guess once you set it and forget it, it's not a big deal, but just a little different. And I wouldn't mind seeing, you know, at least some labels on these scroller wheels, or, you know, just a couple extra buttons. I don't think that would ruin the whole aesthetic, but anyway, moving on here. You do have a 12-inch digital gauge display, which is very nice to have. The only thing I will say is that there is no head-up display in these. Most of the other competitors do offer a head-up display. This does not. I don't really mind not having a head-up display. This is a nice high-resolution screen. But this also is another one of the themes I've picked up on with the Rivian, is that there's not much customization. You know, it's a very much a walled-off garden kind of perspective for how stuff's presented, how you can tweak things. There's not a ton of customization. It's like this gauge cluster basically shows you this. I dove into the settings. I don't see any way to change anything that's displayed on this gauge cluster. So hopefully you like the way it's set up, because there's no way to adjust that. I mean, it works fine, but I am thankful just to have a gauge display, because, you know, that's something that more and more companies are trying to get rid of to, you know, boost profits and, you know, get rid of some of the costs. And so I do like that we have it, and it's really nice and high resolution. So I do also appreciate that one thing that they do that GM does not do is that there's an option to show you both your range left and also the percentage of the battery left. That's something that, again, a lot of companies don't show you percentages sometimes, and I don't know why, because that is sometimes more important than the guessometers these vehicles have as far as how much range you actually have, which can often be inaccurate. So it's really nice to be able to see the, you know, that all displayed right there. Now, coming over to this middle touchscreen, it's, I believe, about 15.6-inch screen here, and it's really nice and high resolution. It's running the Unreal Engine, so, you know, very snappy with all the graphics and, you know, just doing everything. It's never been laggy all week. It's done a really good job, and part of that is because, again, it is very limited in what it allows you to do. My biggest gripe with this, and I can hear the groans from the Rivian fans already, there is no Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto. And whenever a majority of car buyers these days say that that is a must-have feature, it still is just amazing to me that they have stuck with no smartphone integration. And obviously your mileage will vary with that depending on how much you interact with your phone through your car's infotainment screen on the vehicle you currently have. But you know, it's just, it's tough. It really makes it, you know, limiting. You know, I'm going back 15 years as far as what I can interact with my phone on the screen here. You know, I have Bluetooth audio streaming. I can make phone calls, and that's pretty much it. I got to use the built-in nav here. I can't use Waze. I can't use my maps. I can't get any of the extra info I like. I can't use any of my Apple apps outside of Apple Music, which this does have if you pay $15 a month for the data package, which gives you also access to Audible, Tidal, and a few of the other services there. So, you know, it's just a bit unfortunate that they have refused to open that up. You know I've heard various excuses as far as, oh, well, it wouldn't be integrated very well. It would ruin the experience of this system. That they would ruin the design aspects of it and a bunch of other stuff. But there's no harm in having it. You know, you could have one of these little boxes with that displayed. Get rid of it if people don't want it. If you're someone who absolutely loves using everything Rivian, that's great. But just give people the option. It doesn't hurt to provide people with the option. I know there's a whole thing with data and who's going to get the data, and I'm sure Rivian doesn't want to give that up either. But it's just a frustrating thing for me, because it's just every time I hopped in this vehicle, it was like I'm going back in time 15 years as far as, you know, I can't text anyone back when they text me, you know, through the voice, because I can't do any of that, you know. You know, don't have any of the info I usually get from Waze, you know, as far as road hazards hazards, because the Rivian doesn't have that. You know, so those types of things are just unfortunate. And, you know, they're not the only ones that don't do this. You know, Tesla doesn't either. And GM has also gotten rid of it in all of their electric vehicles going forward. But at least with the GM ones, they have the Google Play Store. So, you know, if you don't use a bunch of Apple apps like I do, you won't be as affected, because you can just download stuff in the Play Store in those GM vehicles and run Waze natively in the system, run, you know, all your favorite apps still through the car's infotainment system. But you don't even have the option for that here in this. It is literally only the Rivian stuff, and that's it. Take it or leave it. That's the approach here. And even just the weirdness of, like, they're so strict with, like, I can only have, you know, these 5 icons down here. You can customize which 5 they are, so I appreciate a little customization there. But, you know, you can't have more than 5. And there's space here. Clearly, I could drop in more of these, but instead I gotta, you know, swipe up on this tray if I do want to go into my energy settings, or I do want to go into my other settings, or whatever, you know, isn't in my top 5 there. I have, you know, it wouldn't hurt to, you know, open up the rest of that screen real estate and put a few more in there. Just, you know, weird controlling things like that in this, that it's like, why not? You know, there's no technical reason they can't. They just chose, as a design perspective, to only offer you 5 choices there and make everything else more complicated. Same thing goes, you know, it's multiple taps to, you know, turn on your heated steering wheel. It's multiple taps to do any of the car, you know, features, as far as, you know, opening your charge port door, you know, all these other things. You know, everything is just a couple of extra taps. You know, you got to do multiple taps to change the direction of your air vents, you know, other steps. And, you know, they like to say, oh, this UI is so seamless and stuff, but then I'm still more inconvenienced with this than I am with more of the traditional systems. You know, beyond just the learning curve part, it's just, you know, a little bit more cumbersome. I mean, you know, whenever my passenger wanted to change the volume, you got to press the volume button and then hit over here and slide your finger up and down to change that, versus just having a little knob. So there's some things where, sure, it's seamless and minimalistic, but that comes at the expense of user ease, in my opinion. Again, everyone's mileage will vary. Everyone interacts with these things differently, uses their phones in various ways, you know, to one degree or another. So it's all going to come down to how you feel about it. There's lots of Rivian drivers out there that are happy with it, that have no problems with it. They get used to it. They, you know, use a phone mount like, you know, everyone else that doesn't have CarPlay in older vehicles and stuff. You know, there's workarounds, but to me, it's a bothersome thing for me, and I wish that they would just give people a choice. Just give them a choice. That's all I'm asking here. But anyway, otherwise, you know, everything else on the screen here works pretty good. I do like all the information you have here. And again, everything else, you know, works really well on it. And I do have to say too, the one last thing I'll say about this stereo is that satellite radio, I don't know how they're doing it, but it is the clearest satellite radio I've ever heard in my life. I don't know if they're pulling it from like an online source instead of the actual satellites or what, but it is incredibly clear. Usually satellite radio is a garbage source, but satellite radio sounds so insanely crisp in this, and so that was a nice surprise. And I also really like this gear guard. That's another integration you have, where you have the cameras that can monitor the vehicle, and you know, if someone's approaching it or touching it, you know, that automatically kicks on and records. It can also record your adventures with all the exterior cameras, and you know, just kind of give you built-in GoPros essentially. And so it's really cool that you have that available there as well. Although the only downside of having that gear guard on is that it does drain your battery, and I think that's the reason for my phantom battery drain, where like I had this vehicle just sit for a day and it lost 6% of the battery just sitting there, not doing anything, not getting in and out of it, not even approaching the vehicle with a key or anything. Like literally, like key is off on the other side of the house, and this thing just drained 6% battery for no reason, no one messing with it, nothing. So, you know, and I've heard of other phantom drains in Rivians as well, so I'm not sure if it was entirely to blame for that or what, but just one thing to notice. It is cold, but I don't think any other vehicle I've ever tested that's an electric vehicle does not lose 6% of range just sitting for a day. But anyway, one other little thing I'll mention there, but otherwise, as far as the rest of this interior, it is very impressive. So storage space, fantastic here in this thing. I really love how you have this totally wide open center console with this giant bin at the bottom here, and you also have even this little extra space, which in this one is taken up by this speaker, this camping speaker, whatever they call it, that slides right in there very neatly. And then coming up here, I love how you have your pop-out cup holders. They fold away when you don't need them. That's also really great. You have dual wireless phone chargers here, Qi wireless chargers, and they're really good about charging your phone the second you lay it down there. It's a nice wide contact patch, so it's not like you have to perfectly finesse it to get it to charge like some other vehicles. And they actually say they revised this design to hold your phone in better, which is great. And I love the little slot in front of it if you do want to stand something up. You also have the center armrest, which opens up here and splits in the middle, and a really deep space there. And so that's also appreciated. You also have pockets in the doors with these little push out parts, and that's nice, but it doesn't have a dedicated bottle holder. I'm kind of missing that most other vehicles have these days, but since that is kind of a little bit springy, hopefully that'll hold your bottle in nice and tight. But while we're on the topic of storage space here, I'll talk about the trunk options you have here in this as well. So first off, you do have a front trunk. I haven't tried, but it looks like you could almost fit like a pair of golf clubs, like a bag of golf clubs in there. It's so big. Really an impressive amount of space. There's even a little bit of extra storage underneath of that space, but supposedly underneath that little floor area there, some of that used to be opened up even more, and the heat pump has now cost you about a shoebox size worth of space, I read, according to Johnny Lieberman from Motor Trend. So you lose a little bit due to that heat pump. Still a ton of space up front there, and I'd argue that even though it's a different shape, it's about the same amount of space you get in even like Hummer EV's front trunk, Lightning, all those. I think it's very similar to those. Maybe not quite as tall as some of the spaces in those others, but a really nice amount of space there. And the one really cool thing that none of the competitors have is the gear tunnel, which is a thing ever since these Rivians came out. That's a signature trait for the R1T, and you can see there, it is a really wide, pretty tall space. You can fit some large items in there. You even have a power outlet in there, which is great. And just, a really nice extra bonus space, especially with trucks, whenever you've got groceries and all these other things, you're trying to find places for. Every little cubby counts if you don't want to, have things just fending for themselves, flying around the truck bed. It's really nice to have some actual contained spaces here. And so really, a fun, creative thing that I always admired about these Rivians, and so really great that we just have that still, of course. The one other thing I'll mention up front here too is that you now, instead of having a regular door pull, you have electronic doors. So you have a little button here. Some people don't love that button and just that switch. I haven't minded it this week. It's easy to find. It's feels natural to use and not a big deal in my opinion. Moving on to the back seat here in the Rivian R1T, it is a decent amount of space, but this is where I have certainly noticed it is less space than all of the main truck electric truck competitors, with all of those basically being based on regular full-size trucks, which all have much more legroom than this does. This is certainly better than like a mid-size truck, but I'd say this kind of bridges the gap and kind of is a middle ground between a mid-size and a full-size as far as rear seat legroom. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. You can see I have, a couple inches of legroom to spare, but in some of these other trucks, I'm like able to do jumping jacks back there. They're so big, it's like an enormous lounge, and this is a little tighter. And even with our car seat in place, we actually tried to do 3 wide back there, and it was a little tight. So, it's not going to be, I think, in my opinion, as family friendly as, all those other electric trucks that are larger. And the other thing that I don't love, especially as far as family friendliness goes, is that you have these cloth covered seat backs. And while that looks very pretty, it's very high end looking, even concept car-ish in a way. The problem is that, is going to be harder to clean than just a hard seat back that's more durable. This, since you can see I have a car seat back there, I had to, make sure my daughter's shoes were off so she didn't get this all dirty back there, so I didn't have to sit there and scrub this cloth and ruin it or tear it up or whatever. Obviously that's a very niche problem, but if you do have little kids that you're gonna be putting back there, just keep in mind, if you care about keeping that nice, it's not going to be as durable as just a regular plastic or, vinyl kind of seat back you see on other vehicles. Headroom is also pretty good. It's not massive. You are sitting up kind of high in those rear seats, and you also have a full down center armrest with 2 cup holders and a little cubby in there. And you look forward, you'll see they have their own air vents. They have USB-C jacks there, and also their own little controller screen there. You can even start and stop the music back there. You can change their climate back there, and it's really great you have that. There's also even even more USB-C jacks here in the headrest. So overall, you know, pretty nice usable back seat, but it, you know, still doesn't have the kind of versatility you get, for example, with the Silverado EV, without having the mid-gate where that whole, you know, back seat can drop and, you know, open up the truck bed. You know, there's some other cool ideas. You know, the Rivian's here, of course, having the gear tunnel, but there are some other cool tricks in this segment that, you know, make this, you know, not one of the most versatile in my opinion, but still nice nonetheless. And then the last thing I'll mention though is that truck bed. So it's a 4.5 foot bed, but it does have a strangely long tailgate that kind of extends out, so that with that tailgate down, I mean, you have a lot more space if you're willing to, you know, play around with, you know, keeping it contained, whatever you are, you know, transporting back there. It does get a good bit longer. And it's not the deepest bed either, but it certainly is still a nice usable truck bed for sure. It's also great. You have an air compressor on the left side there, and on the right hand side you do have 2 extra power outlets, and it's also you know, lit. It's got a bunch of lights there in it, and a camera even to keep an eye on your stuff back there if you'd like. I also love the power retracting, you know, cover there for it, and that's also where you'll find the button to actually open the tailgate there. And yeah, it took me a while to figure that one out, but that is where you press onto it. But you know, you're like, you know, pressing all around the tailgate there to try and find a way to drop it, and there is no way to do it aside from that button. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Rivians have a variety of ways to use them. There is a key fob. I believe they still get a key fob for the Gen 2s. I was not given the key fob for whatever reason, and instead they gave me this key card, which, you know, something Teslas and others have, you know, used in the past. This did not work very well for me. It actually didn't work at all on the passenger side. I still have yet to get the passenger side proximity sensor or door sensor to work at all for locking and unlocking. That might just be a glitch with this vehicle. But even using this on the driver's side, there was times where I had to stand with this thing up against the door handle for like 10 seconds or more. I'm standing around in a busy parking lot, and people are wondering what the heck's wrong with me, because I'm standing next to the vehicle, like tapping the door handle, and it's not doing anything, and it's not locking. And I couldn't figure out how to get this thing locked, and it just took forever. So this isn't very reliable. Now, on camera, I just demonstrated it here now that I have my phone as key paired up. This now strangely works better. Even though phone as key, so I did set that up, and that works great if you have the app out and you literally hit the unlock or lock button in the app. It does it immediately, and all the buttons work immediately. The app is very good when you are using it. It is like instant, 100% perfect, flawless, 10 out of 10. But it doesn't work whenever you just walk up to the vehicle with your phone in your pocket, at least not for me. I checked all my settings. Everything was on the way it's supposed to be, I believe. And no joy there. So I had to, every time I wanted to access this vehicle, because I didn't want to stand around for 10 seconds waiting for this thing to work, every time I had to dig my phone out of my pocket, launch the Rivian app, and then hit unlock and, you know, get into the vehicle and do the whole thing in reverse to lock it and get out. So don't love that. Again, I'm pretty sure you still get a fob. Definitely stick with a fob, because the other two options, in my opinion, don't work great. Some people have had better luck with phone as key. I know phone as key in my own personal EV that we have, not from Rivian, that works flawlessly without having to ever take my phone out of my pocket. So maybe, again, a glitch with this vehicle or something, I'm not sure, or the sensors on the doors, I don't know what the deal is, but this was a little glitchy with that. It was kind of annoying, honestly, but again, hopefully that is just something for this, or something that's fixed with a software update. But anyway, once you are in and the vehicle has recognized that you have a key active, you just put your foot on the brake, and it turns it right on. And also, every time you even open up a door, it starts booting up all the systems, turning on the heat, doing all that stuff. So it is, you know, always kind of having everything on for the most part, unless the vehicle is locked. And so that is really nice, because it means it starts like preheating itself. If I'm getting my daughter into the seat in the back, you know, just opening that door gets everything going here, so I don't have to get in and do that myself. So there are some nice perks to that for sure. And it's great that, you know, once you hop in here and sit down, it's all basically ready to go. There's no boot up to wait for or anything. It's always right here and always immediately on. All right, so setting off here in the Rivian R1T. So the first thing you notice about it, well, the first thing that I noticed is the fact that the one pedal mode is non-negotiable. You have to do one pedal. There's 3 different levels of regen. I have it on the lowest setting, and it's still, like, when I let my foot off the gas, like, that's almost as fast as like the top regen settings for other vehicles. It is really aggressive. I mean, I didn't even want to mess with the other 2 modes, because they're going to be even more aggressive. Now, one pedal is fine. There's a learning curve to it if you're not used to it, but you eventually do get used to it. and it's not a big deal. But the thing that I'm missing the most is that you can't do any coasting, you can't do any creeping. So creeping up in traffic, inching up, and all that stuff is just less seamless. You always got to be going into the gas a little bit for all those things. And there's even auto hold as standard. I haven't even found a way to turn that off. So it's always auto holding whenever you come to a stop as well. So you got to always nudge it forward versus just, you know, doing that casual coasting. Again, I don't see the harm in giving people an option to not have regen, but instead they insist on it, and so it's just something, again, you got to do things Rivian's way or the highway, and so you just have to learn how to live with it. Again, it hasn't been that bothersome after the first day or so here, but just, you know, another thing where you don't have a choice. Otherwise though, you have excellent visibility, you know, nice thin A-pillars, great view forward, view out of the sides is great with nice tall windows, view out of the back is also huge with that glass just being, you know, full width there, nice and big, and so that's all, you know, really good. And again, I love these cameras. These camera views, I mean, everyone in the vehicle when I was driving people around this week was marveling at the clarity of the cameras. I swear, they're like 4K, 60 frame per second kind of cameras. Like, they are so high quality. Definitely the best camera quality in the industry, bar none. Like, hands down, they take the crown for that for sure. And so that's really nice though, because when you are in tight spaces, things like that, that extra clarity is certainly, you know, appreciated, and it also just looks nice and feels like you're in a modern vehicle, which is also just something, you know, I never really appreciated until I got in here, and now every other vehicle I'm going to drive, I'm going to be like, wow, these cameras are crap compared to the Rivian. So one really great perk there. Other things here, it drives so well. They really have nailed the driving dynamics here, and I've read these Generation 2s are even better than prior Rivians. Again, I've never driven a Rivian before this week, so I have no prior experience, unfortunately, to compare old versus new here. But what I can say is that it is phenomenal. So I have the ride feel on soft. There are 3 different settings for this air suspension. You can change and, you know, raise and lower it. It can have up to 14.7 inches of ground clearance, and so, you know, it's just been an incredibly soft ride all week. I've been so impressed with that. But I turned down onto this back road here. I'm going to put it into the sport mode, and let's see how it accelerates. Here we go. Listen to that! That's cool! Really, you know, feels like it's really maximizing those motors there with that sound. It sounds very futuristic, but authentic and real. I don't think that's anything fake. It's just genuinely those little electric motors are whirring away and doing their thing. And they are doing an impressive job here. So they're new electric motors. Previously they were made by Bosch for Rivian and a Rivian housing. Now they are in-house developed by Rivian, these motors. And so this tri-motor is a new offering here. Previously you just had dual motor and then the quad motor setups. Now we have this tri one which takes the quad motor rear from the quad motor version and then puts in the dual motors front motor here. So definitely rear biased and very, very punchy. And so with this tri-motor configuration, we have 850 horsepower, we have 1,103 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 for this one is quoted at 2.9 seconds. If you want even more power, though, you can go for the quad motor version, which is even more powerful now. That cracks over 1,000 horsepower and almost 1,200 pound-feet of torque, as well as doing about a 2.5 seconds 0 to 60 for that one. Just bonkers. And that top one also does have a launch mode. There's no launch mode in this one, I don't believe, but you don't need it. It's plenty fast enough. It does hold back a lot though. That felt a lot faster. That was my first launch in sport. I did do some casual accelerations just to feel out the power in the all-purpose modes throughout the course of the week here, but hands down, sport mode is the way you get it all, and it is impressive for sure with that power. Now, as far as other levels of power, there is still a regular dual motor version, which is also more powerful than before. I think that's like 650 horsepower. And there's like a 550 odd horsepower standard version, which even that slowest R1T will do like a 4.5 seconds 0 to 60. So, I mean, all of these are, you know, really quick and very, very impressive. But yeah, so we are in the sport mode, and that has also put the ride feel into firm. And so we are going to turn down onto this windy road here and see how this thing handles. So we have 275 wide tires all around. They're Pirelli Scorpion tires. It's a unique blend for Rivian in particular, so these aren't just off-the-shelf Pirellis, but this is another area where this is very impressive. Handling is really, really good. It's just very flat, very composed. And even got the back end there, since it was a little bit wet there. I just boosted a little bit and got the back end to just twitch a little bit there. It's playful and it's fun. And obviously this is a, like nearly 7,000 pound pickup truck. Your limits are going to be, lower, and you're not going to want to mess around too much with it, at least not on public roads here. But, it's fun, and it's a ton of punch, and it's just, it does the electric thing of, being very impressive in a straight line, but also handling very well. And, as far as like body control and as far as just handling competency, this is definitely the best driving of the electric trucks I've driven. I haven't driven all of them. I haven't driven the new Sierra EV. That's really, I think, the only one I haven't covered, but it is really impressive. The only thing I will say is that, I'm missing rear wheel steering, which you do get in the Silverado EV and also in the Hummer especially. In the Hummer, I mean, that thing, it feels like you're navigating a hatchback as far as the turning radius, because it is just so quick with that. And this, especially in parking lots, I was driving this week and navigating tight parking spaces. I was wishing I had the Hummer, because that four-wheel steer just shrinks that thing and makes it so easy to park. Now this isn't enormous, it's smaller than the Hummer, so it's actually, not that bad once you get used to it. But I'd love to see them add rear wheel steer someday. I think that would, add extra practicality and extra performance. But other things though, whenever we're just kind of calming down here and just driving normally, it still is just so quiet. This road that I'm on usually generates some more road noise. It's a little bit of a rougher road, and it's so quiet, it's so luxurious, and that is where the premium thing, they absolutely are selling me on that, because it is quiet in here, the ride is buttery smooth, and honestly, like, during my week of driving here, like, I almost stopped paying attention to how it drives, because it's just so effortless. It just seamlessly blends into the background. As far as, road noise was nothing to take note of. As far as, the ride quality, I'm not feeling any of the imperfections of the road. Like, it is really remarkable. I mean, as far as adaptive suspensions goes, and as far as refinement in a vehicle, again, this is miles better than all the other competitors. A lot of those other electric trucks are based on, regular gas-powered trucks, or they, just still have some issues. Like the Hummer is fun, but that, because of its removable roof panels, it creaks and rattles, and the interior is not as nice. It just doesn't feel as premium for basically the same money as this. And this just, is going to be the more pleasant one to daily drive from a, again, quietness standpoint, from just the refinement and everything. It's really, really well done. Now, as far as the battery component here of the Rivian, so there are some rearranged batteries, and there's now an LFP battery pack for the lowest version there. But as far as the batteries, so here in the Tri Motor, it's currently only available with the Max battery pack, which is now a 140.5 kilowatt hour pack, I believe. And so it's a big battery pack here. And so with the Tri Motor setup here, they're claiming 371 miles of range here in this version, and all of these charge at 220 kilowatt DC fast charging rates, by the way, unless you go for that LFP pack that does 200 kilowatt. Still, very impressive. Now, I will say I fast charged this twice already, and here in the winter time, not preconditioning the battery or anything like that, I was maxing out about 160 kilowatts on a deserted charger without having to share with anybody else. So it's going to come down to conditions and all that, but it can do up to 220 here, which is great. And so as far as the battery pack ranges, again, depending on the combo you have, you can get up to 420 miles of range out of an R1T now for these Gen 2s, which is really impressive. Again, Chevy was very proud of, crossing the 400 mark in the Silverado EV, and now this, can do even more at 420, which is really impressive, and that is going to be for that dual motor with the bigger Max battery pack you can get in that. That's the way you get that peak, range. Now, you can get as worse as 270 miles of range as far as configurations goes. And what I can say too, my efficiency that's been observed here over almost 174 miles of driving now, I've been getting 1.65 miles per kilowatt hour, and I just did the calculation earlier when I was getting 1.66. That equates to about 235 real-world miles here in the wintertime. So a lot less than 371, and that's sometimes to be expected, especially in the wintertime here. Certainly it kills your battery a lot quicker, and it's just not as efficient. But you know, with the heat pump here that we got for the Gen 2 version, I thought that the range losses would be a little bit less. You know, if we were talking about a non-heat pump vehicle, that'd still be a little bit of a bigger loss than I would expect, but, you know, fairly par for the course. But to have the heat pump and still be doing, you know, I mean, going from, I'm supposed to get 371 and I'm at 235, and that's assuming, by the way, I assume that the entire 140 kilowatt hours is usable. I don't know if that is the actual usable capacity or not. So it could, if I'm actually using less than that as far as usable space, it could be even lower than that. So, you know, still, it's nice you have the heat pump, and maybe for some people it will make a nice difference, but to me, I was still kind of disappointed with just how much this lost range, and, you know, with how quickly it was sucking down the battery, and with how quickly it was just sucking down battery sitting in my driveway. You know, keeping this thing topped up at a fast charger was a challenge, because again, it's a massive battery pack, and keeping this thing charged up is, you know, a timely thing. You definitely want to make sure you can charge one of these at your home, or, you know, at work or something like that, because fast charging these things with this massive battery is expensive and, you know, again, timely. I think they do claim something like you can add like 140 miles of range in like 20 minutes or so, you know, and again, in ideal circumstances, but, you know, again, your mileage is going to vary there as far as that goes as well. Now, out on the highway here in the Rivian. So one of the other Gen 2 additions here is that we now have this Rivian Autonomy Plus kind of system, which is not autonomous, but it's, you know, they're making steps to, you know, get closer to that. And we're going to head and turn on the adaptive cruise system here. And so it's highway assist is what I have on currently. And for the Gen 2 vehicles, as of right now, it's a free trial to have all of these extra enhanced features. And so what it does, it still is a hands-on system, by the way, even though I have played around with not having hands on the wheel, and I haven't had it scold me yet, interestingly enough. I'm not sure, you know, why, but, you know, as far as out here on the highway, this is a very windy day, so you're going to hear some wind noise. That's just the environment, not really the truck. The truck was still very nice and quiet out here for the most part. Obviously, it's a, you know, brick-shaped thing cutting through the wind. You're going to hear some, but it's, you know, not too bad, honestly. But as far as this system goes, it's been doing a pretty good job of giving me reliable driving here and not crossing over lane markings, for example, or doing any of the other cardinal sins that I sometimes observe in some of these other, you know, assist systems, as they call them. And this one's, you know, been pretty good all week. They also are adding in more features, so I don't believe this has it currently, but I think coming later this year we're going to have intelligent assist, as far as if it senses cars around you, it will inch away from those cars, which is something that Cadillac Super Cruise and GM Super Cruise already does. So that's something that's, you know, already currently available in some of the competing trucks. This is going to add that this year, which is great. And also now with this enhanced suite of features, we'll also even navigate on-ramps and off-ramps for you if you do have, you know, the navigation system running with your destination. So, you know, it's a pretty advanced system, and I do love how it really does a good job showing you exactly what it's doing out here. But now we have a gentle corner we're going around right now, and yeah, it's really spot on. It does a very good job. So I do really like their system for sure. Now, as far as the other safety tech in these, everything is standard. So, you know, blind spot monitoring is still here. We have automatic emergency braking. You know, all the things you're expecting in a modern vehicle, especially one that's over a six-figure price tag like this. The last thing to mention, though, is the pricing and how this compares to the competition. So as far as Rivian pricing, for the R1T here, for this Tri Motor version, they started at about $100,000. This one, as tested, is about $107,500. And you can get, you know, a regular base R1T for about $70,000 or so, and the quad version coming out here in 2025, that's going to be even more expensive. They haven't even said how much that one's going to be yet. But as far as how the pricing of this one compares, so that is a little more expensive than some of the others out there. And, you know, stuff like the Hummer does 1,000 horsepower with its, you know, pickup truck version, and that is $111,000, just a couple $1,000 more. Gives you a little bit more power. Now 0 to 60 time, I think, is actually, you know, basically the same as what we have already here in this. I will say, you know, after launching with the Watts to Freedom launch mode of the Hummer, it is more dramatic with that nose lifting up. I mean, the whole thing has so many more body motions. It is more off-road focused and is just all over the place. It's comical. It's fun though. If you're someone who loves that whimsy, I think the Hummer, you know, all that extra stuff in the Hummer is not a bad thing. It can be a bad thing though if you want poise and you want, you know, just good handling, then I'd say this is certainly going to be the better choice. But again, with that Hummer, you get that four-wheel steer, which I love in parking lots in particular. Makes these, you know, trucks so much easier to manage. And also you have Apple CarPlay actually in the Hummer. That's one of the last GM vehicles on the EV side to get CarPlay, but it does have that. Now the downsides of the Hummer is that the interior does not live up to the price tag. You're paying for the performance, you're paying for the off-road stuff, but you know, there's some trucks that are $60,000 that have a nicer interior than that Hummer. And also it's creaky with those removable roof panels and not as polished. But if you want a statement piece and you want to have the same kind of power and, you know, really make a statement, the Hummer is, you know, really appealing, I think. If you don't want something as crazy as the Hummer, GM also has with the GMC Sierra EV. That's a regular pickup truck that, you know, is about $101,000 or so. Undercuts this a little bit, and that's going to give you, you know, the Super Cruise function, which again the Hummer has as well. But you get the Super Cruise. You don't get Apple CarPlay in that one, unfortunately. Same thing goes for Silverado EV. You know, that doesn't have CarPlay either, but they do have Super Cruise in those. And again, if you do a lot of highway driving, those are going to be so nice, and to me are the better driver assist systems in those GM vehicles versus this as of right now in the beginning of 2025. And so for me though, it's just like no contest. Like, those are going to be the way to go on the highway. But, you know, the interior, even in the Sierra EV, you know, it's not going to be quite as high quality as this, in my opinion. Still very nice, though. It just comes down to how picky you are about that stuff. But that one, you know, does undercut this a little bit. You know, it does have less power, less performance. And I will say, especially in the Silverado, the ride was pretty rough on those 24-inch wheels. So, you know, there's some compromises there for sure. But, you know, that's all kind of playing in the same area, and you know, it's just other ones worth considering that again are also bigger too. So you're going to have the bigger back seat, and basically everything this competes with is going to have a bigger back seat. A little more practicality as far as some of those things goes. You're going to have bigger truck beds, you know, all of that. But you know, I think the other oddball one is the Tesla Cybertruck, which is so polarizing. You either love it or you hate it. If you're comfortable driving around in a rolling meme machine, then, you know, there's those. But it's even worth noting that the Cybertruck, for its comparable Cyber Beast version that has the same kind of performance this does, that's only going to have 300 miles of range versus this, again, being 371 or even up to, you know, 420 potentially. You know, but I've never driven a Cybertruck. Again, I don't think that's even worth considering, because it really comes down to, do you want one of those or do you not? There's really not a whole lot of cross shopping, I think, that goes on there as far as that one. But to me, the strongest competitor to this in a way is going to be the Ford F-150 Lightning still. The reasons why I like Lightning: first off, you have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, you have the familiarity of a regular F-150. There's no learning curve, especially if you're familiar with EVs as far as just charging, but outside of that, you have regular switches and knobs and buttons and a normal infotainment system that's customizable, but again, just gives you all that smartphone integration. So you just hop in, your phone's ready to go. You know, nothing weird. You have a regular key fob that works every time. You don't have any of the other, you know, weirdness that I've experienced with this vehicle this week. It's a regular F-150 that happens to be electric. And if you just want a good electric truck, I still think that is just the easiest point of entry, especially if you're new to EVs and you don't want, you know, the quirkiness of this and, you know, having 0 buttons in here and all that. You know, I just feel like it's a little easier to live with an F-150 Lightning personally. Now it's a lot less power, so it's more comparable to the lower versions of the Rivian here, not so much this tri-motor version. But you can get a loaded one of those F-150s, the F-150 Platinum Lightning, for like $81,000, and that's assuming you pay MSRP. And as of the time of filming this, at least right now, in the beginning of 2025, nobody's paying MSRP or even close to it for a Lightning. There's big discounts. And so if it were my money, yeah, I like the extra power of these. And obviously this one in particular is more of a performance truck. And so, you know, there's nothing that Ford offers yet that can compete with this one in particular. But if you're just looking at R1Ts in general, I just save a bunch of money, save myself, you know, the learning curve, just go for an F-150 Lightning and have that CarPlay, that just ease of use, you know, have the way bigger back seat, regular truck bed, all these types of things. Still have a nice big frunk in that Lightning again, but you know, you don't have the other quirkiness here of the Rivian. So, but yeah, overall, I still like the Rivian, and I think especially, again, if you want you know, this is the sportiest truck by far as, you know, having insane acceleration, really good handling still, great ride quality, really nice refinement, very premium interior. I really do find these appealing, and I think for me, if it, you know, had all the bugs worked out of it as far as, you know, getting into the vehicle and all that, and it had Apple CarPlay, this would be really a top contender for me. It's really that simple. It's very well done, and I can live without all the other buttons for the most part. It's just because of some of the lack of customization here that kind of irks me a little bit. You know, that's really the one thing that is holding me back from loving the Rivian here, but I am very impressed with it. I think it's a really, you know, cool vehicle, and yeah, I'm happy I finally had a chance to experience the Rivians here. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the Rivian R1T. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Rivian for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching. Please check out my other electric vehicle reviews if you want to see what some of those electric trucks other than the Rivian are like, and what it's like for those. I have more thoughts on the Lightning, more thoughts on the Hummer, all that. So definitely check those out. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.